is a beautiful rainy day in Southern California, and I was originally gonna sit outside and do this under the rain because it's just so pretty and clean, and definitely making me feel very inspired to talk more to you guys. So I decided to bring it in and just enjoy this tranquility and then get into some turf talk. Okay. Hi guys, it's another day, another glorious turf day, and I'm in my study today because it's pouring outside in this very chilly California day. I don't know if you're watching the news, but this is the craziest weather we have had in California for a while. So thank you for joining me. I'm feeling very chatty with you guys. So just feeling like taken to the airwaves and talking about my favorite topic, feminism. And I want to talk to you today about men in feminism and some ideas and some thoughts on men that lend a gender critical voice to our movement, and also men who profess to being allies to women in this particular fight with self-ID. I just kind of want to get into it and address some of these beliefs that permeate through our community about men. To start off, men can't be TERFs. As a matter of fact, most people that are called TERFs are not really TERFs, because TERFs are radical feminists to begin with. And I don't want to be too much of a purist about this, but you know, it's kind of required to have some kind of fundamental knowledge of what it is to be a radical in this movement. And certainly when it comes to self-ID, I think radical feminists have been the first women among the first voices of gender criticals that are out there. So I kind of don't like when men are called TERFs, because they cannot be feminists. Men can be feminist adjacents. I guess that's the word that everyone is preferring now. And they can definitely be allies to women in our struggle. But I do see feminism in the context of men. I see it somewhat like childbirth, in that it's the work of women, and men will find themselves quite useless in that room, because men can never know what it's like to be a woman. They can't even fathom what it feels like to be a woman. So it's one of the reasons that we do not include men in the realm of feminism. But I don't think, and I know that a lot of radicals are going to disagree with me, because a lot of radicals, I think, take the approach that, well, men are patriarchy and they're the oppressor and they're the ones that brought us into these messes, that we, as radical feminists, fight really hard to defend. Like issues with prostitution, and how, of course, it's been in the best interest of men to see women as objects and as trades women, as workers in the sex industry. But it is not an industry. That's very much a male pathologized idea. And so those are the kinds of things that radical feminists scrutinize and criticize. And we're going to continue to do so because the problems like self-ID, they proliferated because women were being shut out of that dialogue, what it is to be a woman. Radical feminists are the women that never lost sight of that. So, in short, men cannot be TERFs, men cannot be radical feminists because they cannot be feminists. They don't know what that experience is like, and they cannot appreciate the struggle for liberation. They just can't. And the reason that I feel so strongly about this topic in particular is because I've been around that particular demographic of man who loves to call himself a feminist, and that will be your average gay dude. Gay dudes like to trip a lot. Actually, they do trip and stumble quite often in their rhetoric and pretty much most things they say. But gay men are the ones that are always saying that they're pro-woman and feminist, and sometimes they say that they're female. So one can't believe the things that gay men say. And one of the things I've never believed about gay men is that they are feminists. Actually, they are the anti-feminists in my experience, not in my opinion. It's just the kind of interactions that I've had with gay men. They have always been very anti-woman. If you look past, or listen past the things that they're saying and look at the things that they're doing and how they're acting, gay men tend to be very critical of women and women's appearance. And that's one of those things that I've definitely have always seen and been around in the community, the gay and lesbian community, is that level of mean girl tear down from gay men. So they are like the biggest obsessors of women. It's interesting how the demographic known as the average male homosexual are hypercritical of women, but they're also the biggest purveyors, I guess you would say, of femininity and what they perceive to be feminine, but is just their really grotesque and exaggerated representation of it. And of course, that's always been harmful. I mean, this was the gateway to the harms of self-ID, were those groups of gay men that were coming up in drag, and it went from them calling it an art form to just it's everywhere now. It's a whole form of expression. But if you're really looking at what's going on, it's a complete teardown of the most grotesque stereotypes of womanhood. It's like womanhood in like some kind of clown show 3D. It's really weird. So they're very much the issue that I see here in our community, in our fight. Gay men haven't necessarily been very helpful. And the way that they continue to push gender ideology. They are the ones out there that are very much pushing for these laws. Scott Weiner here in California is a gay man who frequents all kinds of interesting fetishistic and BDSM type of events, and there's proof and coverage on that, and how that goes unnoticed is just beyond me here in the state of California. So when it comes to talking about gay men and femininity, or gay men and feminism, I think that while gay men in particular have been not helpful in our feminist struggle and have actually done a lot to hurt feminism and to hurt women's rights, a lot of it by way of pushing these self-ID laws and this ideology that is harming a lot of children. I do think that their counterpart, heterosexual men, might just be the antidote. Because in my experience, especially as I've come out more and started talking about my gender critical views, even though it's just reality, I have seen that heterosexual men are really the ones that are getting it. They're understanding the distress and the harm, the trauma that some women have experienced at the hands of trans-identifying males and males in general, being offensive and sexist and donning woman face and hurting women with that. The people that came out for Rebecca Phillips here in Santee, for example, there were some legit motherfucking men in that crowd that I said to myself at the time, and I would say to myself again if I ever saw that, like, that's a man. That's a man right there. Men hold their brethren responsible. They know, they understand that women are greatly disadvantaged in every way, confronting males and talking to males, reasoning with males. A responsible male would be acutely aware of this need and will set himself first, right smack in the middle of such an altercation, if it ever came to that. Real men also hold their brothers accountable if they see them in the women's bathroom wearing fetishistic clothing. Men would step in and say this is inappropriate and it's not safe and there could be a child in there. And there are men like that. I was brought up in a Latino, very conservative house, and I saw a lot of bad men. I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot of creepy uncles out there and creepy stepfathers, all kinds of dudes in every family, I'm sure. You probably know one or two or five that cross the line and take advantage and become abusive. I've also known really good men. I had an amazing grandfather who spoiled me but treated my grandmother like shit. So you know what I mean? Like, I've seen it all. There are good men out there. There are, and I have seen men stick up for women in a lot of situations where there's a rabid man involved who cannot be reasoned with. I'm not exceptionally pro police, but I also support the police, and I support the fact that a lot of males go into law enforcement and that they subject themselves to be frontliners for emergencies, including crazy shooters and stuff like that. So I appreciate that from men. Protective men are needed. Men need to know the disadvantages that women have when interacting with their brethren and just need to be more responsible. I don't believe that that's the majority of men. And I know that it takes a lot of courage for men to stick up for women and confront other men about it. I get that. I observe, and can tell that men are just as afraid of other men. I just don't think that that's a good enough excuse to not say something. If we accepted men into our political activism, into our circles, if we wanted to do that because we felt like they contributed to the dialogue and helped enforce our message, we can very well do that. But I always hesitate that even in activist circles where you have seen and you sort of get a feeling for people, especially in person, you know, with men, and the fact that most of the women that I've been in activism with, or most of the people that I've been in activism with, have been women. When there is a male around and we are doing social justice work, I've always thought that men needed just a little layer of extra supervision because it's wherever there are large groups of females and one male, the dynamic is usually really interesting and not in a positive way. And so a lot of times what I've seen is men taking advantage that they are that trustworthy voice. No, really, you can count on me. I'm here. I get it. I understand. And it turns out that there's always some ulterior motive. There is a constant vetting process, I feel, that feminists need to take into account when considering men in our activist spaces. I've been a separatist now for over 30 years. So what that means is that I have not lived in a house with men in that long of a time, nor had sexual, nor intimate, or emotional relationships with men. And though I've had male acquaintances by way of the female friendships that I've had, like, you know, boyfriends, brothers, husbands, I tend not to befriend men. And the times that I have, there was always some kind of feeling that something was off and not appropriate, in different ways, just very different ways. But having that insight of just really being in a lesbian continuum and living in a very woman-focused world and community and environment, it's a lot simpler, a lot quieter of a life. I've always thought that women, if you find constant incompatibility and toxicity, and that you're just unable to get along and see things completely different from monogamy, loyalty, the way that you're raising your children, if these problems are persisting, chances are it's him. I'm almost sure of it. And what I always felt and what I always tried to do was empower women. Women need to be empowered to quit relationships with men, to walk away if need be. Not to say, of course, that all men are toxic, but I just don't believe that there are very many good examples of responsible men out there. And I don't have a lot of faith in them as allies in our struggle. Though I would like to think that there are men that we can count on. When this hits the fan and starts to escalate, I do know that there will be men that are going to do the right thing eventually and align with women on self-ID stuff. But I don't have a lot of faith that that would last and that they would see us through to our liberation. In fact, there's very few, men that I would allow a seat on the mothership because, like I said, and I'm an optimist here, I think. I am not as jaded as a lot of heterosexual females that I know that they've just given up. I still would like to think that men are gonna wisen up. They're gonna get it, and they're gonna start seeing us as human beings and not just as things, not just objects, not just units for their control. There's gonna come a time when this will turn around. And I really do think that self-ID, this problem of self-ID, once solved, is going to be the gateway for women to do just that, to segue into everything that we have been asking. Well, close to everything, I hope. I don't think, and I want to make this very clear before I close out, I don't think that men are going to contribute to our liberation at all. That's never been their work. It's never been their business. They are the they are the one that implanted the problem in the system, and so cannot be the ones to help us wade ourselves out of that. And that's going to be up to our sisters together. Every woman responsible for her sisters. It's going to be like that. And if it can't be that way, it won't be. I'm telling you right now, our liberation very much will depend on our unity. And the less male influence that we allow ourselves, the more quieter lives we're going to have, the more clarification is going to come to us in time. Once you step outside of a situation, it's when you start to see just how toxic it was for you. You can't see that when you're in it. I don't think most of us realize how harmful the day-to-day movements of the males in our lives are to us. The way that they sort of steer our trajectory, right? Our lives. I see the difference between my life and that of my friends, my female friends who have males in their lives. I'm able to move around with more freedom. I'm able to think freer thoughts. I'm able to construct my own world and do whatever I want. Me and my partner, we're both pretty male free in our lives. Though again, not completely closed to the idea that men can be allies to women in our feminist struggle, and not closed to the idea that good men don't exist. They do. But constant vigilance. It is something that I feel must always be checked, must constantly be policed. Yes, even if it takes that. What I would like to ask from our brothers, those feminist adjacent men who do exist, and I know that you're out there and I know that you're watching our discourse, help us speak. Make a path. If you are in the space, you know how difficult it is for us to be heard, for us to be taken serious. Clear path for us to do so. If you see abuses, if you see men silencing women, policing women, telling them to shut up, telling them to stop wearing makeup, slut shaming them, and doing all manner of things that are misogynist and sexist, I would hope that you would have the balls, the cojones, to speak up for your sisters. This is what we need right now. Self-ID proliferation and the usurpation of womanhood and the gentrification of childhood, those are matters for women. That is women's work. And let us do our work. You just clear a path. And that is a role of men in feminism. Thank you so much for tuning in again. I was feeling very chatty and I wanted to get that off my chest. I hope you have a good day. Bye.